Alright, I want to give a bit of a response to J-Stu Productions. He made a video titled Violence and Sexuality in Movies, and he asked for those of us that are viewing, that are parents, to please chime in. I feel this is a great topic to discuss, so why not? I have two kids, as most of you know. They are 1 and 5 years old respectively. But before I give my own rules of the house, so to speak, I will say that the way I was brought up, my parents, when I was at least my kid's age, blocked just about everything, whether it was violence or sexual content, even if it's the most minimalistic. I mean, kisses and things like that, but if it was intercourse being represented, no, that was a no-no. Or inappropriate attire kind of things, that I was not allowed to see those movies. I've had people argue back, well, did you watch any cartoons and things? And they'd say, for instance, like He-Man and G.I. Joe, where there's war type stuff, Thundercats, things like that. I've had other parents, and while having these discussions, that constitute that as violence, and therefore, like much of the cartoons of today, which I don't particularly care for, have shied away from the cartoons of my day. Even I don't even see Roadrunner and Coyote anymore. For one, I put cartoons on to see what my kids enjoy. So that is always brought up in discussions, this cartoon. So what really is acceptable violence and all these other things? My dad prides himself on, because I have a French background, well, we have French blood and stuff, and I would go like on my first dates when I was 7. That, as I got older, wasn't so much like this issue, but they still would keep like hardcore visuals of intercourse away from me. But if it was something like J-Stu brought up in a Michael Bay film like Pearl Harbor, things like that, there's kissing and holding and stuff like that, it became more and more acceptable. But they would not ever let me watch a Hotel Rwanda type movie or Terminator or something like that until much later. For my own kids, I'm a mixed bag. My son and I are members of the local museums here, and so he's already seen nudity in artwork and things like that. And at his age of 5, I do explain a lot of the whole sexual content, and in relation to any questions that he asks, and I answer it truthfully. I do have other parents that disagree with that method, but I feel that kids are really smart. They absorb things. Sorry about that. Anyway, I do feel that children are very intelligent, and at least I find with my 5-year-old that he is able to discern things and accept things that I say, and it could lead to other questions, or it could end right there. And I'm not uncomfortable as a parent to continue to answer my child's questions if he does see something like that in a museum. Then let's get to movies. My kids, but more so for my 5-year-old. My 5-year-old would or has seen many movies that people would definitely constitute as violence. But I break violence up into two camps. One would be a violence of Hotel Rwanda, and the other violence I describe as fictional violence. Something like Star Wars, where definitely people are dying and you see hands getting cut off or whatever with a lightsaber, but nonetheless it is fictional. And Hotel Rwanda showing definitely human brutality in a very real sense. It did happen, so on and so forth. I do think that argument is because the violence is not really happening on screen, it's not real violence, is a completely bogus argument. There is definitely images there, and so that's why at least for the movies that I allow my 5-year-old to see, I separate a fictional type thing versus a real type thing. So other movies like Black Hawk Down, or very real war movies, maybe Tears of the Sun, all that kind of stuff, he will not see. There was a debate on whether my son would see this latest Terminator, because I was pleased that it became PG-13. And he loves robots and machines because he loves Transformers, which he is allowed to see. And many will say, oh, you know, the violence in there, and then there's also that sexuality in there. I don't have a problem with either of those. So, just, you know, staying from Transformers, I did take him to see Terminator, the latest Terminator, and he found it, he very much enjoyed it. And it's, you know, fictional with these robots and things like that, and he thinks it's cool. But on the flip side, he'll never see a Braveheart or something like that. Now, that leads me into a comment that I read on Jay Stu's video, where I read that many parents do show their very young children the Passion of Christ. But that also leads to other parents that I've gotten in discussions with, where they think Disney and Harry Potter and all this is very, very bad, and they won't show their children that. And because it has magic, and that goes against their beliefs and things like that. So they don't show their kids those type of movies. But the Passion of Christ, yes, I guess it's because it's in line with their beliefs. I do run into many parents where violence is a more acceptable medium than sex, for sure. But I also, at least for the group of friends that I have, it's not so much the case. Other parents will disagree with me on certain levels or certain specific movies that I decide that it's okay for my 5-year-old, but for a general reasoning, they're pretty much on the same level of thinking, and sexual content is acceptable, and for some of the things that I will allow for my son to see. But I won't go as far as deliberately having a movie that has just sexual intercourse there or whatever. If it's in like the movie Transformers or whatever, it's going to be of the what is it, PG-13 type, so fine, I'm okay with it. But it would be, but if we're stating, okay, I'm going to go take my son and see a very adult content movie which you know, specifically has sexual scenes in it, well, no, my son's not going to see that. Obviously, it's an adult movie. He wouldn't as much latch on or enjoy the content of that movie. I mean, if we're talking like this hardcore drama or whatever, something like that, or even movies that my wife enjoys where it's been about a woman's past, which was very violent, and the movie was just about this woman's past and then how it affected her in the future. You know, that's something that I'm not going to show my son. I guess it can't be broken down from, at least in my context, that, oh, it's because there's sexual content in it. No, it's because the content itself is too far removed from content, that things that he enjoys. I thought it should also include horror movies. My son will not go and see a Friday the 13th or Freddy Krueger or anything of that content at his age right now. I certainly watched that as I became a teenager and things like that. But there are some horror movies where I will let him watch when it's like a monster versus monster type thing. He likes to watch werewolf movies, like if they fight vampires and stuff like that. That's like for Halloween. This last Halloween, he wanted to dress up as a werewolf and stuff. He, in that content where it's not just bloody and guts and ripping human beings apart, but more so just an animal versus another monster fighting it out, it is acceptable for me, for him to watch. And I mean, he likes a lot of those battles between mythical characters and stuff like that. But for Friday the 13th or Texas Chainsaw, no. So, in conclusion, trying to sum up everything I've said, which has probably been just about everywhere. Of course, as my children get older, the standards change. But I do not have a problem, or is there any one item more stressed over the other, whether it's sex or violence. I treat them both equally, and whether they can be viewed or not, and that will, of course, continue to change as they get older. But anyway, thanks for watching.